Okay, guys, last thing for this week on the use of the select statement. This is going to be important for your assignment as well. But I want to show you how to make kind of a chain of links using a select statement. So for example, when you might go into, imagine a shopping site, right? You go and display, you do a search, and the search goes to the database and produces, using PHP or some other server-side language, produces a list of products, and then you can click on that product. And then you see the details for that product. So it might just be a product name, but somehow you can click on it and it will go to the database and get the information for that product and show it to you. How does it do that? Same thing, imagine a list of students, right? So that's what we're looking at in our example. I show you a list of student names that got greater than 50, and then you click on one and it shows you the full details for that student. So I want to show you how to do that. And by way of example, if we take a look at PHPMyAdmin here, which this is a system that's built in PHP to manage your database. When I click on these items here, it changes me from one table view to another. And if you actually right click, you can see it's just a link, and if you right click this link and inspect it, so let's make this a little bit bigger. So this lets us hold on. This lets us take a look at the code, and you can see it's just this is just an A link, and it's got an href attribute. It's going to sql.php, and then there's a bunch of get parameters, and you'll notice the name of the database and the name of the table, db equals Scott, table equals city, are right here. If I inspect this one, actually I should be able to just, I think, go to the next one here. Here we go. Right here. This is for the country link. You can see it showing up on the left-hand side over there. You can see that it's got database of Scott and table of country. So to create this this whole view, it had to the system had to do some database queries, some select queries to get, for example, the names of all the databases and then the names of all the tables. It's not it might be a different query, but you get the idea. And then it used the name of the table not just to display it, but also encoded it into a get parameter on the link, so that when I click it, I go through to the view for that table, which is kind of neat. It's a good trick. Now I want to show you that trick in some examples that I created for you guys. So again, I have XAMPP running. I have the database and the Apache server running. I also have the grades table imported into my database, because this example uses the grades table as well. And I've taken from the sample code for this module the select to code folder and put it directly into htdocs. And there's a bunch of examples here, and if I click on example.php, I get a list of students, and if you mouse over this list, you might see down in the corner here, each one of these is a link. And if I right click, well, I could maybe, let's do view page source. Why am I not getting view page? There we go, view page source. So it's a little bit ugly, but you can see we have a UL, and each list item is inside of an A link. That seems a bit backwards. Seems like maybe I should have put the A link inside the LI, but that's okay. But you can see it's each one of these links takes us to a page where I have encoded the ID of that user. So this says show single user ID equals 9, show single user ID equals 10, show single user ID equals 8. So all of these user names have come back, and I've retrieved the name, which I used to display, and I've retrieved their ID number, which I use in the link here. So that when I click show single user on one of these items, say this one here, it goes to show single user with ID equals 5, and then it can use that in a database query to show the details of that user. Now all I'm doing is a var dump. I just did a select query to get that user and a var dump, and it's asking me if I want to delete the user shown below, and this is not finished, but if I press the yes please button, if I press that, it goes to delete user. It doesn't do the delete, but it passes on the user ID again. So how does this work? Well, this works. This is a form, and I have used the ID that I received, and I have put it into a hidden input element, which is an input element type that you may not have seen before, that exists just to send a parameter. I give it a name and I give it a value, and that value was written in using PHP, and it passes it along. So I'm passing whichever. So I do a select and I display all of the items here, and then when I click on one of these things, it sends the ID through as a get parameter, and then it can send that ID through again to delete user.php. So that's what I mean by writing select queries to code. So let's take a look at the actual code for this. So in example.php, I connect. I think I'm just getting the whole table. So I'm getting first name, last name, and also their student ID. So if you look over here in localhost under grades, there's a dozen columns here, but I'm taking first name and last name and student ID, which is the primary key, so that I can look them up later. And over here, so I get all that information, and then down here I'm using a while statement, and see, I'm printing this out again. I really think I should be echoing the A links, the A tags inside the LI, but that's okay. I echo an A tag. I want each of these names to be a link that goes to showSingleUser.php, and I'm hard coding an ID value equal to the student ID that I got from the query. And then I echo out, I use first name and last name to echo out their name, and then I close off the A tag. So each of these items that I'm showing on the screen becomes, I've written part of the information to the part that's going to be displayed, and I've written part of it secretly as a parameter. I don't know if you guys can hear that, but there's a horn honking in the background. I've got my window open. Apologies for that. I'm going to go into show single user, which is where we go next. So show single user is what I'm showing here with ID of 5. So it is expecting to receive a parameter. So the first thing I do is I get that parameter. It should be an ID, should be an integer. Now I don't check the parameter here. I should check the parameter, but in these examples, like I should check if it's null or false. But in these examples, I am often stripping things down just to focus us in on the key parts. So now I do a select query where I'm going to get all the information for the student from the grades table, where the student ID is equal to the one that they clicked, the ID for the parameter that I got here. And then I execute, and the parameters, I've just hard-coded an array here with the ID in. That's really important. Don't put the ID here, remember, because that is, we're getting information from a GET request, and malicious users can take advantage of it if we put it in here. Then I've got an if statement here. I check to make sure the query was successful. If it was, I also check to make sure that I can get the row. So I should just get a single row. And I should do something more fancy here, but all I did was a var dump just to prove that I got the row. And then I'm showing you the other way to write the ID into the code. So again, I retrieved the student ID. It came because I retrieved everything, because I wanted everything for this. I wanted to show the full information for the student. And I'm creating a form which goes to delete user. I'm using method post here. Generally speaking, if there's something that user's clicking is going to trigger a select request, that should be get. And if it's going to change something, like delete or update an item, that should be post. So that's why get and post were created. Get is for retrieving information, post is for putting information somewhere or modifying information somewhere. And generally speaking, if we have a delete user file here, we don't want to encode the ID that we're going to delete as a get parameter, because then the user can bookmark that easily and can share it and can do the request over and over and over again. So we don't want them to be bookmarkable. Whereas if we were just using it to display a single user, it's nice to be able to bookmark this with the ID encoded in here. I can send this to my mom and say, look, you want to look at my student record? You know, go here, and it's got my ID encoded in here. Okay, so this is a little different though. I'm using a form here because I can't send post parameters easily through a link. So I have a submit button, and this this hidden input element, which has a name and a value, and I have inside the quotation marks of the value, I've put an expression tag that prints in the student ID. Hidden input types were made just for this purpose, for passing information on from one page to another. If you think about what input elements are, like if I go input type equals text, or type equals number, or type equals color, they look different to the user, and they behave differently for the user. But from the point of view of the server and information transmitting back and forth, all an input element is a way to send a value to the next page when you press submit. So this is one that just doesn't appear to the user at all, and so you have to hard code in the name and hard code in the value. Otherwise, you still have to hard code the name, but the user would be setting the value by filling in the input element. Here we're just setting it by hard coding it here. So this allows, if I go yes please, that's going to send, I should, over here, if I go into network, let's go back and say yes please, I should be able to see the ID being sent as a post parameter here. Okay, so this is actually a primitive form of session management. We're going to look at session management much later in the course, a more sophisticated way to do it. But session management means managing the conversation with the user and knowing who you're talking to. So I have a chain of 3 pages here, and it remembers everything I did on the first page. So I click max here, and it remembers on the next page that the ID I clicked was 4. And when I say yes again, it remembers here still that the ID that we're talking about is 4. And we do that just by passing the information on through links or through post parameters in forms. Okay, let's go take a look at the guide. So this walks you through the examples and explains everything and what's going on here. Here I'm hard coding a get parameter, and over here I am hard coding the value. I'm putting the value in here for an input element, so that when I hit submit, it gets sent as a post parameter. Okay, so this walks you all through that as well. And this is the last piece, and this is what you need in order to do the assignment. I am going to make a video for the assignment, and I'll post that as well, but we can talk about it in class too. The very last thing is your quick reference with just all the 411 on everything that you might need to use from this module. So that's the end of the Module 2 content. Oops, just punching in here because I recorded the whole video and forgot to mention the exercises. I think you guys should try some exercises for this. These are the exercises for part 6. What I would suggest you do is maybe try number 3. You could try number 1 or number 3. I think that those are both good ones. Number 3 is especially if you did the cities example. So you should have, if you did finish that, you could also use the sample solution, I think, for this. But when if you finish that, then you should end up with a cities.php file that gives you a list of city names. What I'd then like you to do is turn each of those names into a link that sends them to another page just for that city called cityupdate.php. Put a form, show the name of the city, and have an input field and pre-fill it using value equals in the input form. Put in the current population of that city. So you'll need a select query to get the name of the city, the current population of the city, and the ID. So that form should have an element for the new population, and it should have a hidden element with the ID. When you submit it, it goes to changepop.php where it updates the population for that city with the new information, and then prints a success message. And then next time I go back, I should be able to see the new population of that city. So that's, I think, the best one to do. If you want just a minimal one, maybe finish off 1 and 2 are for finishing off the select to code examples. So finish the code for delete user. Right now when I click it, yes, I want to delete the user, it goes to that 3rd page and all it says is we got the ID. But what I think you should do is use a select query, tell the user the name of the student who's about to be deleted, then ask, are you sure again? Ask them, are you sure? Give them 2 forms. Each form has a single button, yes or no. The no form directs back to show single user, sending the ID. So it goes back to the show single user. The yes form also sends the ID, but goes to another PHP file, maybe a delete, that does the delete operation for that ID. So that's another one that you could do. Actually, this one's pretty good. This one's and more minimal. So maybe this is a good one to start with. And number 3, get to it if you can. Okay, so give those a try, and we'll probably go over them in the class as well. Okay, back to the other video that I recorded. So I'll see you in class, and if you get started on the assignment, maybe you should do that and take a look at the video for that, where I quickly go through what's expected in the assignment. And I will see you guys in the next video or in class.